So my name is Gayle McLaughlin, and I'm the former mayor of Richmond, California. Now, Richmond is a city across the bay from San Francisco, for those who don't know. It's a very diverse city. We're a majority people of color community. We have 40% Latinos, 27% African Americans, 16% Asian Americans, the rest white, and some Native Americans. And I'm also a co-founder of the Richmond Progressive Alliance. Now, I want to share with you today some information about, it's the Richmond story, and it has to do with the formation of the Richmond Progressive Alliance and how we transformed significantly our city. And then I'll share with you how that led to me running for lieutenant governor and what I stand for, et cetera. So first of all, I served in office in Richmond for 12 and a half years, 8 of those years as mayor, and I termed out as mayor and then ran for council again because I wanted to keep the work going. So all 4 of my campaigns were ran and won without a penny of corporate money. Now that's very, very important because we need to separate the corporations from the people. A democracy is for the people. Corporations are, worried about their bottom line, and they have taken over our democracies throughout our state, throughout our nation, and we have to gain it back. And that's exactly what we did in Richmond. In 2003, we decided in Richmond that we had had enough. Now, first of all, we have this big major oil refinery in Richmond, the Chevron oil refinery, and it's like the largest along with El Segundo, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but this oil refinery was purchasing the whole city council. I mean, for decades, they had the city council in their pockets. So it was either the council members and the mayor were purchased by Chevron or they were intimidated by Chevron. So we in the RP, many activists, I should say, throughout Richmond, we're working on various issues from homelessness to crime reduction. We're a high crime city. We were known for our high crime. Or we were dealing with issues of, fighting back at Chevron for all its pollution and all the incidents that it had that harmed our community. So we realized that the city council was just, listening to us or pretending they were listening, and then they'd vote their own way. So we decided, enough was enough. We were going to become the leaders we were waiting for. We knew we were great, as all of you are great activists, we knew we had that passion for activism, but we also needed people sitting at the dais to cast those votes on behalf of the community activists. So we decided to form a progressive alliance. We called ourselves the Richmond Progressive Alliance, the RPA. And we disregarded what party affiliation or lack of party affiliation we had. Some of us were Green Party members, some were Progressive Democrats, some had no party affiliation, some were Peace and Freedom Party members, and likely others as well. So we came together based on our progressive values. And we came together for the distinct purpose of gaining local political power. And we did this by running candidates without any corporate money. And I was the first corporate-free council member. I ran and won my council race in 2004. So it was a very lonely seat on the council right then because I was the only corporate-free council member, and the majority of the others were all in Chevron's pockets. So luckily we had the community organization standing with me and me standing with them. But that's not the case today. I mean, we have had many more wins, and I'll share where we're at in a second. But I want to share with you what Chevron has done for practically all our elections. But I want to share the experience of the 2014 election. In 2014, I had termed out as mayor and was running for council again with 2 other progressives, 2 other RPA progressives who were not taking corporate money. The 3 of us were Team Richmond. And then there were Chevron's candidates. We called them Team Chevron. And so Bernie Sanders came to Richmond in 2014, and he He spoke at our auditorium. I was mayor at the time, and had the chance to introduce him, and it was really great. He hadn't decided yet whether he was going to run for president. He was just thinking about it, and so he shared all his wonderful views, as we've all heard him say time and again, and we were all so inspired. And he said, he endorsed me and my two colleagues for city council, and we were very proud to have his endorsement. And then he later said, or I think it was that very night that he said, whether you know it or not, the eyes of the country are on you. Because if you can stop Chevron from rolling over you with all Chevron's money, you will give hope to the whole country that we can define our own destiny. And the fact is, all three of us progressives won our race, and all of Chevron's candidates lost. So we proved it could be done, and it could be done in Richmond with this big oil refinery that used to have the whole city council in their pocket. It could be done anywhere. So let me share with you a few more projects and accomplishments of the RPA, because like I mentioned, things were pretty bad before the RPA came together, but they started to change. First with my election to council, and then my election to as mayor, and then other RPA progressives got elected. And right now, we have, sitting on the city council, there's 7 members of the city council. We have 5 RPA members. That's a super majority. Five council seats won without any corporate money. So that's the kind of thing you can do if you form an organization that really supports gaining local political power, and you have people willing to step forward without taking that corporate money. So, but we had many, many additional accomplishments throughout the years, even when we were in a minority. Even most of the time when I was mayor, I was in the minority with maybe just one other RPA council member. But the community was there, and the community was, completely year in and year out standing for the issues that needed to happen. And I was very grateful, and we had this reciprocity relationship. So what we accomplished, we passed a minimum wage to $15 an hour. We passed the first new rent control law in California in 30 years this past November. We reduced crime dramatically. We reduced homicides 75% in 8 years by addressing the root causes of crime, not by hiring more police. We did hire a community-involved police chief, which he really helped to change the culture of the police department. Still not perfect, but definitely moving in a good direction. It has moved in a good direction. But we really offered the opportunity for our youth. We offered job training. We had an Office of Neighborhood Safety, which is it's a proposal I put forward as mayor, and it's been really, really successful. We hire formerly incarcerated individuals who have turned their lives around, and they go out to the neighborhoods hardest hit by violence, and they talk to the young people who have been involved in these street sects, and they quell the violence before it begins, and they tell them, and guide them, mentor them, and bring them into the programs, the job training, the education programs they need. So we reduce the crime dramatically. We also got $114 million additional dollars of taxes from Chevron. Now that's over 15 years, $114 million. That came through years of community pressure and talk about fair taxation. We also limited Chevron's pollution. And we are currently suing Chevron for, some of you may have heard, in 2012 there was a major fire in Richmond. A huge plume went across the city and throughout other cities nearby. You could see it from San Francisco across the bay. And so first time in Richmond's history that the city of Richmond took this big oil refinery to court. Now some of you may have heard that recently the Chevron refinery in El Segundo had a major fire. So Chevron obviously hasn't learned. In Richmond, the regulatory agencies fined them. Not enough. They fined them $1 million, I think, or $2 million, for willful neglect. They had thousands of rotten pipes that they didn't replace. So they've since had to replace them. It took a lot of pressure from the agencies and from the community. But you see that it's a long process, and it takes a lot. It takes more than one person in elected office, or it takes more than 5. It takes more than a supermajority. It takes the community. So we also did things like we decriminalized homelessness. So at one time the council didn't allow people to sleep in public places. We said, hey, if the shelters are filled, where are people going to sleep? It's a human need. So we decriminalized homelessness. And we strengthened our civilian police review commission, our oversight commission. So it's one of the strongest in the nation. If there is a shooting or that results in death, a police shooting in death or serious bodily injury, immediately an investigation, a civilian investigation, oversight commission investigation occurs. So we opposed the expansion of charter schools. We opposed new jails. Instead, what we did was use funds for reentry services. We, of course, opposed the privatization of our public schools, worked very hard in terms of, we actually gave our public school district $3 million because of the fact that we didn't want them to close the small schools. So Richmond has really changed, transformed itself, and we're just, we know the work has to keep going, but it's a tribute to the fact that what a progressive alliance could do, and with those corporate-free elected officials. So after 2016, in 2016 is when we got that super majority. We got 2 more RPA council members, and Bernie, by the way, endorsed them too as well, those 2 young men who are now on our council. And after that, people started saying, how did you do it? How did you get to where you are in Richmond? And so could you come and present to our group? And so I started giving presentations. Other members of the RPA did as well, but I was giving a lot of them, and sharing what I'm sharing with you. Hey, you could do it too if you form a coalition, if you form an alliance, and you start, some among you decide to run for local office. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to have that principle, those sense of principles, and be collaborative. And so I shared this with people, and it finally dawned on us. If we had a statewide race that we were running, we would have a larger stage, a louder megaphone. We can make our message go further, because campaigns are times when people share views and people want to come and hear the views of the candidates. So I decided to run for lieutenant governor.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the purpose is really an organizing campaign. That's what this campaign is about. I'm going city to city, encouraging people to form progressive alliances, build that local power, and many progressive alliances over the past 3 months have come about. Some on their own, and some with, learning from the Richmond model. And we have about 5 or 6 of them from San Diego to North Coast have formed a progressive alliance, and they're identifying candidates, and it's really great. So it's really about getting people to understand that this issue of corporate-free races is so important, because right now people know they're hurt. People are hurting. But they know corporations are big money makers and profiteers, but they don't always realize that the people they elect, may be talking the good talk, but then they get into office, and because they took all this corporate money, when an issue comes up that affects their corporate donors, all of a sudden they're changed. They don't walk the walk. They don't vote the way the people would expect them to. So, that's something that we can explain and we can make people understand, because in Richmond they came to understand it, such that they voted, a supermajority in to office. So, I before I go on to saying what I'm standing for Lieutenant Governor, I want to share with you a little bit more about the RPA. It's really important because there's wonderful groups here. You could all come together and form a coalescence, and you could say, hey, we're going to meet frequently and run candidates for office. So the way I describe the RPA, it's a diverse, inclusive, progressive, corporate-free, year-round organization. It's year-round, and that's important because you need a progressive structure in place. Some campaigns, builds momentum and such, and then after the campaign, if the candidate loses, the movement goes away, and if the candidate wins, but they don't keep that structure going, it goes away as well, So we need permanent structures of progressives standing together, and, we need people inside the city councils as well. So the purpose of having this organizing campaign is more than encouraging progressive alliances. It's networking them together, because when we network together, we can get the statewide issues that we need passed, because the power of numbers really puts the pressure on the legislature. So I'm saying, I'm in this to win it. I'm in this race as Lieutenant Governor to win it, because when I win, I'll keep the organizing going. I'll keep networking progressive groups, unions, progressive cities together, and we will put the pressure on the legislature to pass the issues like single-payer Medicare for all. Not a watered-down version of it, the real single-payer Medicare for all. Free college, and free college that includes community college. There's some bill floated that doesn't include community college. Well, people in my community, it's a low-income community, Richmond. Community college is what a lot of the young people go to. And then they should continue to have and be encouraged to go on to four-year college. Also, we need to reform Prop 13. We really need to close that corporate loophole. If we close the corporate loophole of Prop 13 is for average homeowners. That's why it was put in place. The corporations have manipulated it to their advantage. If we close the corporate loophole, we will have $9 billion of extra money in the state coffers, which will go to the cities. Like in Richmond, Chevron's property taxes will go up, and Richmond will be the beneficiary, as our school district will. But if you look at it statewide, $9 billion a year. So that's a lot of money that could help our schools and other things. I'm also standing for a progressive millionaires tax. So every million that somebody brings in, or an entity brings in, they would have, I'm suggesting maybe, and this is all up for brainstorming, 1% additional taxes. So up to $12 million, that would be the cap. That would be an additional 12% that an entity would have to pay in taxes. Right now, I think it's 13%. So if you figure when you get to 12 million, that's like 25% in taxes. And I think that's only fair when you have these millionaires and billionaire corporations that they pay far more taxes. Some of them pay none. I also think we should have an oil extraction tax. We're the only major oil-producing state in the country that does not tax oil extraction. And what I'm suggesting, we don't want any more oil extraction, but if they're going to be doing that extraction, Californians should get the tax money. And we should raise the tax every year, so to discourage them from doing more extraction, because ultimately we know we have to get away from fossil fuels. So that's one way to really disincentivize them and get the money in the meantime. And we could use that money to solarize the whole state. That's going to be a couple $2 billion, or I think, a couple $2 billion that would bring in. So that would actually help us give rebates to homeowners, and we could put people to work. Richmond has a solar installation program, training program. What we did with the Obama stimulus money is we used that to give rebates to our homeowners who wanted to solarize if they used graduates from our solar installation program. So we can get jobs and renewable energy. So that's another program I'm standing for, oil extraction tax. Also, I've been thinking about a speculators tax. We have empty, vacant buildings all around the state, and we need those filled with really truly affordable housing. But the big banks and such are sitting on them. So if you have a speculator's tax, it'll be incentive to fill those buildings. And another idea I had is to utilize eminent domain. Some of you may have heard in Richmond, we had a program which we called the Eminent Domain Program during the foreclosure crisis. And we were seeking to acquire underwater mortgages by eminent domain, using the city's power of eminent domain to reduce the principals on the mortgages so that our homeowners could stay in their home. You know, a novel use of eminent domain rather than telling homeowners they have to move because a freeway has to go through. It's using eminent domain of the mortgage, not the home, to keep the homeowner. So you have the city reduce the principal because the big banks weren't doing it. And I'm thinking now it would be nice to utilize some of the vacant property, the vacant buildings in cities through eminent domain, and then use those buildings and that land to build truly affordable housing. So there are many thinking outside the boxes way we can address so many of the problems that we have. And another issue that I'm standing for, of course, is statewide rent control. We did it in Richmond, other cities have done it. We can have statewide rent control. The housing crisis is just off the charts, and we need to repeal Costa-Hawkins and the Ellis Act. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but only certain homes, certain rental property can be rent controlled. If we repeal those two laws, we could protect all tenants. It still allows the landlords to raise the rent, the cost of living, every year. But we really need to protect renters and build truly affordable housing. Another way we can build truly affordable housing is by giving tax incentives to those nonprofit developers who truly will build housing, not for those who make $70,000 and $80,000 a year, but for those who make $40,000 a year, like we have in Richmond. And we should start raising the taxes on luxury developments. We really don't need that. I mean, the poverty in California calls out for us to really address these issues with these bold solutions. Let's tax those luxury developments so they are disincentivized from building the luxury developers and instead building the low income. I'm against fracking. I think we should ban fracking. I think we need to truly push back against the privatization of schools and against the privatization of prisons. The idea of someone making a profit off of people being in prison. They have quotas. These privatized prisons have quotas that they have to make. So it's like, instead of trying to keep people out, they're wanting more people in to make their quotas. So I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and we need to, prison is a place that we want to keep people out of, first of all, but if they're in, they should be rehabilitated and given opportunities when they come out. Richmond, like I said, we have a reentry solutions center where people come out of prison and are given opportunities and steered to the various places where they can get the help they need. Other things that we've done or that we need to do in our state is address campaign finance reform. We really need to ban corporate donations. I mean, if we can ban our corporate donations, we can really, get our democracy back, and put people first, put the environment first. Without that, corporate banning of donations, we're constantly going to be in this fight for just being heard often. And another thing I'm for is a public bank, a statewide public bank. So, in North Dakota, they have a statewide public bank, and they've had one for decades, and it's working. It's helping with infrastructure. It's helping with giving small business loans. It's helping with public works projects. Right now, a city will have to float a bond that they have to pay a huge amount of interest on. Well, why? Because the banks are private and they want that profit. A public bank isn't in it for the profit, so we could truly use a public bank. And so many, I'm actually looking at the whole idea, I don't know if any of you heard of it, of basic income, a guaranteed income for all. So we really need these bold solutions, and we need candidates that are going to stand for them. So the final thing my campaign is about is, and this ties in with things I've said, is really denouncing the corporate control of our state. So when I'm lieutenant governor, I'll work with all the community groups that are working to address that issue, to pull corporations out of our state. And you know, I can make the lieutenant governor position what it's never been before, just like I made the mayor position in Richmond what it never was before. And of course, you also sit on various boards and commissions as the lieutenant governor. I would be sitting on the California Economic Development Commission. I would plan to advocate for the public bank there and rally the community to support that. You'd sit on the UC Board of Regents, rally students together for free college and ending debt and solutions for ending college debt. And you know, there's the State Lands Commission, and we could rally together to protect our shorelines and not have more drilling. And so I'm looking forward to doing this work. And so I'm just going to end. Well, first of all, before I give you my final words, please check out my table. We're looking for volunteers. We don't have a lot, you know, we're raising good money, but we're never going to have the millions that the other candidates, the corporate candidates, do. So if you're willing to volunteer doing anything, you know, long distance work, social media, whatever, please check the volunteer column. And I don't know if we passed the sign-up sheet around. Okay, so we passed the sign-up sheet. Take a button, take a bumper sticker, and there's window signs. So please, you know, partake in this campaign. It's not about me, it's about building a movement. It's about continuing the momentum that Bernie started, that Richmond has started, and to really, you know, we're all in this together, and we're trying to overcome this catastrophic free fall that the Trump administration is you know, thrusting the whole world into, and we can do it. We can do it together. So my final words are, you know, it's not easy. As we all know, those who've been organizers, organizing is not easy, but it has to be done, you know, and it takes those of us who are willing to stretch ourselves to do it. And it's also, there's joy in it as well, because, you know, it builds solidarity among us. You know, we're all brothers and sisters. We're brothers and sisters on this planet, really. You know, we're a global family. That's why I'm so glad to see Veterans for Peace here. You know, our country is in countries all over the world intervening and causing wars and all. We need to really stand for peace and be a global family. And we can do our part in this country by organizing and building solidarity with one another. So organize, organize, organize. The present is a time of struggle, but the future is ours. So thank you very much. Questions? Thank you. First of all, the first time I was a candidate and every subsequent campaign, I found as I expressed my values that they were the values of most other people. You know, it's just, if you don't talk about them, people don't really know, you know, they don't realize that it can happen, you know, that, hey, we can fight back against Chevron and win. It's not an impossibility. So you share your values for a healthy environment and a healthy, safe community. And you know, people listen, they say, well, I want that too, because that is there. Social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. I think people have that inside of them for the most part. I think there was a segment, and still is, a segment of the community that thinks that, you know, hey, you can't change anything, everything or anything And some of them side with Chevron. You know, Chevron gives the city a certain amount of tax money, as if, you know, the $26 billion a year they make, they shouldn't even be giving us more. But we've convinced people because we've explained to them that, you know, hey, this oil refinery is here. It shouldn't be involved in our politics. It spent $3.5 million in a city of 110,000 people. That's how bad they want to stop us. And that's really obscene. So we did change minds, and we also brought it out from others.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think you're one of the most refreshing, creative, obviously sincere, experienced voices that I've heard in quite a while. And I would also like to say to the other folks here, Michael's Vietnam vet, I'm the widow of a Vietnam vet, and we would like to connect with you guys, okay?
All right, that's good. Yes?
I thank you for coming. Love everything. Kind of just hit everything on my checklist in my head. Biggest thing, with your policy proposals, you're great, but our legislator isn't very great. The taxes and Governor Brown signing that horrible gas tax that puts more burden on everyday people. How would you make sure that the taxes that the legislator and the state Sacramento is collecting is spent for those, like the lottery tax is supposed to be spent for schools, like that.
To spend it for the people's priorities. Yes. Yeah. I'll tell you, I have no problem calling out legislators or, you know, elected officials who are doing the wrong thing. I mean, I marched to Rendon's office because he shelved single-payer Medicare for all, and did a speech, you know, saying, hey, this needs to come back on the table. So, I have to just share this. David, I'm trying to think, I'm blocking out on his name right now. The Lieutenant Governor of Vermont. Where's Paul? Paul? My husband just must have left the room for a moment. He would remember. Okay, so I know it. I got it. David Zuckerman. David Zuckerman is the lieutenant governor and a strong Bernie-crat. He's supported Bernie going way back. And he came to Richmond and he talked, and he did a fundraiser for me. And one of the things, Bernie called him the most progressive lieutenant governor in the country. And, you know, we talking about how there'll be 2 progressive lieutenant governors when I win. But somebody asked him a question. How do you make, exactly like your question, make the legislature accountable? And he said, I put out a newsletter by electronics and a hard copy newsletter calling out those elected officials who aren't standing for the right bills or, you know, aren't bringing forward the right bills. So I would do that. I mean, I did it as mayor. I put out a yearly report and put out newsletters monthly and sometimes more than that. So I would do that. I would call, and I would work with the community to do that, holding press conferences with community leaders speaking about it. Not only just me. You know, we would form that united front and make it clear that the legislature has to do the right thing, or they're going to have this happen time and time again, the mobilization and the calling out and bringing the press in. So that to me is the way to get things done, by bringing people together, by standing together, the force of the people. You know, corporations have a lot of money and influence, but nothing compared to people when united. So that's what we're doing.